And we are live, everyone. Welcome. My name is Trent, aka TD. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Sandy, aka Sam. And today we have Michael Rubinelli from the Wax Studios, head of gaming. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me. I
Yeah.
appreciate you bringing me on the channel today. It's going to be great.
Glad to
Yeah.
have you on.
Yeah. So, man, blockchain brawlers. The closed beta is out. Sam and I
Yeah.
got a chance to play it earlier. Man, tell us all about BC Brawlers.
Well, what'd you think, first of all?
Oh yeah, I
You can't say I played it and then just not. and
yeah. It's innovative. I love the idea of taking a card game and making it. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, so I don't want to go.
Say a lot. We've told people exactly what it's going to be. We just don't want them to look at it yet because it doesn't stream very well. Because the point of this closed beta was literally just to test the core mechanic of playing cards head to head. Like, if you kind of a student of the industry at all, so Shigeru Miyamoto, who's designed every Mario and Donkey Kong like ever and Zelda, he's the person that we all hold to a very, like, he's the top of the food chain as far as designers are concerned. It's a very well-known story that he used to make every single Super Mario and Zelda game as gray block demos. Because his whole point was like, look, Super Mario, as an example, Super Mario Brothers is a jumping timing puzzle, right?
Mhm.
Can I cross this gap? What happens if I hit this block? Can I land on this? Can I land on that? Can I avoid this? He said, if I can make it fun with gray blocks, he said, I can make it fun once I add the art. And so we have a very similar kind of minimalistic approach. So Richard Garfield, who designed Magic the Gathering, is just a brilliant guy, right? Like, he's a real prince of an individual. He's got this massive brain. He's a PhD in mathematics. He said, here's a card game, get as many people to play it and understand balance first and foremost. So we said, great. So we put out this closed beta of just this card game. And there's wrestling kind of branding and there's, blockchain brawlers marks, but it really just focuses on the card game. And we want to make sure the card game itself, because the card game is very different. It's really fun. It's not like Magic and it's not like poker. It's kind of a blend of all these different things. He said, if you can get people to love that, then the rest is a layup. And so far, they're absolutely loving it. And we could not be more pleased with kind of the reception it's gotten.
I really liked it. I thought it was a good, unique, again, I don't know. I guess you said we could share everything. So like the concept of being able to have like a lead card and just, I don't know, the amount of gameplay that can come behind that, like whether you're following your lead card with a weaker card or a stronger card to, I don't know, trick your opponent either way.
Yes. Sam, the thing that we find and we tell people, like, really intentionally, don't be kind of put off by it's a really simple premise, right? And things that are simple to explain are simple to understand. So it's real simple. Do your two cards add up to more than my two cards? I'm like, okay, sounds kind of lame, sounds easy, sounds obvious. But then you realize, well, you only show one card and you wager based on what you're showing versus what your opponent's showing. And then there's reasons to fold, there's reasons to play cards in a certain order. Like, there's all this layered complexity, right? And then you get, like, at least for me, it was 2 to 3 games in. I'm like, yeah, okay, I read the design doc, and yeah, Richard, Richard's one of my heroes, and I'm a big Magic, degen player. But then, like, 2 to 3 games in, like, a light bulb goes off in my head. I'm like, oh my God, like, this is so devilishly clever, right? It's about reading your opponent. What are their tendencies? What is the situation? What is my ability to do damage versus avoid damage? What is my, how many cards are out there in play? And I'm counting up my out. Like, there's all these things that all of a sudden it's like this, Karate Kid, paint the fence, Daniel-san, wax. Like, you have this moment where everything just sinks in. You're like, holy cow, this is amazing. And I want to do this again and again and again. Because now I get it. And so there's a lot of people initially. In fact, I had one guy in the Discord channel said, this sounds boring. Sounds like it's not for me. But I own a Brawlers team, so I'll craft all these assets and I'll sell it to players. And won't that be wonderful? I'll make a ton of money because that's all I really care about. I'm like, yeah, great. We have those players in channel, bros. How much money can I make and how quickly and when Lambo and all that shit that you have to deal with in the space, right? I looked at he published
okay,
his Steam account information. And it said, we released the beta, and this was like 4 hours ago. We released the beta like 16 hours from when he posted his time in game. 8 hours of gameplay he had racked up so far. for a game that he said sounds boring and I'm not going to play it. He's like 8 hours. I'm like, how do you even play? Like the game lengths are like 3 to 7 minutes, and he's put like 8 hours worth already. I was like, holy cow! And this is our gray block demo, if you will.
Right.
So, and he was not like the anomaly or the exception to the rule. Like everybody's feedback was, I can't believe it. Like you guys have done it. Like this is it. And look, we believe we're building the biggest and the best blockchain game in the world, but we also believe, more importantly, we're building just a great game, right? Which is how we look at everything. It's like, we don't want to be relatively excellent. We want to be objectively excellent. We want to keep you from playing, League or anything from Supercell or anything, from kind of all the standard esport. Like we want you to come into this world and compete and, take part in our leaderboards and our competitions and our tournaments and all these things and really have a good time. And by the way, we have the greatest gaming community in the world. We so intentionally manage and cultivate our gaming community. We allow people to speak freely, but we don't allow them to be douchey, right? We allow them to have contrary opinions and to speak freely, but they can't not move the narrative one way or the other. They can't just say, give these baseless kind of claims. And so we're very, very intentional with how we do things. And we give people a lot of rope, which they appreciate, but we don't give them, too much rope. So there's this whole notion of every single aspect of what we're doing: community building, gameplay, monetization, player-to-player economies, innovation in the space, all done within the world for, players to own their assets. Like it's a really powerful metaphor. And the reason why people couldn't kind of wrap their head around it is because we're doing something that's never been done before.
Right.
And once they see it, they now go, oh, that's what you meant. And it becomes much clearer, right? Because the knee jerk is, I've been involved in a lot of Web3 projects. They're all scams, they're all rug pulls, and you guys are all liars, right? I get that.
Right.
You're broken inside. You've got scar tissue. People have hurt you. I understand that. That's not us. First of all, I'm on docs. Like you can find me. I'm very
right.
I'm very visible, and I've done this for a long time. When I say I'm going to build a great game, they're like, "Meh, meh, meh."
Right. So, speaking of
we
which,
could
that's
go
a
into
great
a bit
segue. Let's talk about your background, your history, what you've done. So, I guess first and foremost, like when did you get into the game dev or production scene?
A million years ago. Let's not talk about when did I get started. Let's talk about what I've done once I've been there. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
I kind of have a follow-up question to that. I guess just based off of the research I found, EA was one of the first places. Is that correct?
It was the first place.
It was?
Nice.
Okay.
It's
That was what I want to make sure on.
And I had this really weird kind of awakening at EA. And so it was a really kind of interesting story. I was just this young kid out of college, and I had a business on the East Coast where I had said, it would be a good idea is to take all these NES games that I finished that were just collecting dust. And I know that people rent movies, but won't they rent games? This is like literally 1986, 87. This is a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And I've kind of always been entrepreneurial by nature. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather sold his coffee company to Nestle Corp, and
Nice.
so sort of like in my DNA. And so I said, I'm going to take all these games I put a ton of money into that I have no more value in maintaining. So I took them to a local convenience store, and like a month goes by, and I'm like, dude, when are you going to put them out to rent? He goes, I can't keep them in. He showed me a stack of receipts, and I'm like, holy cow, I'm onto something. So there's this whole business model. I said, I'm going to go to every mom and pop store in the area that is a convenience store. It's a video rental store, whatever. And I'm going to be their games dude. And I made more money doing that literally like 3 hours a week than I made my full-time job.
Wow.
But 1 year, so summer of 91, I sent myself to CES to Chicago, and I run into the people at EA. I said, I love all your games. They're like, oh, you're a gamer. Tell us about yourself. And I did. Long story short, I got a job at EA from all that. Now there's a lot of interviews, and they had to fly me out and all that hoorah. But I entered into the marketing department. Like, oh, I've made it. I'm at the Mecca, like the mothership. I'm home, and I'm this young kid. I'm like, they're paying me to do this. I can't believe it.
And you worked on some of their biggest projects too, working on like some of the earliest Madden games.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is I start off in the marketing group, and I realized that my calling was production. Like I didn't want to put the box together and post screenshots and write copy and build manuals. I wanted to actually do the design work. And that was at a point in time where just if you said, yeah, I want to do this, you're like, yeah, okay, why not? Like now it's like, key and electrical, this and that.
Right.
But I was just this real opportunistic kid, and I got to do things that were kind of core to who I was. And it turns out, I made a lot of really good product decisions along the way, and kind of always had this player kind of leaning kind of lens that I built everything through. And that served me really well in my career. So Sam, to your point, yeah, I did a lot of the early Maddens. I did the first ever college football game. I did the first ever, EA baseball game after the Earl Weaver series. It was Tony Lewis of baseball. Then I did so many great things, and from there, Midway, Capcom, THQ, Disney, on and on and on. So it really was kind of leaning into my passion and, believing in myself, betting on myself. And it was a long road, but it felt like in some weeks, some days it feels like it was just last week, right? Like I've done it for a while, but it's been a blur. It's been great.
That's awesome. So just real quick, I wanted to run through the list of games. I don't even think this is all of them. A few of the sites that I went to were all showing like different amounts of games that you've worked on. But this seemed like the most put together.
Is that Moby?
Moby, correct.
Moby has a pretty good gameology. Yeah, there's a lot.
Which, I mean, there's just many on here.
It doesn't have any new stuff, but all those old games,
like Rugrats. I loved all the old Rugrat games. Worked on some Scooby-Doo games, Star Wars games. This was a great game.
Yeah.
Let's see. There were some other ones in here. You worked on some WWE games, which was something that we wanted to bring up to ask if that had any impact.
I was there during the transition. I've got a bunch of funny WWE stories. I don't know if we have time for that, if you want to allow for that, but
go for it.
I can share one with you. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? Acclaim had the license to do WWE games or WWF games, because Acclaim licensed everything. They licensed NBA Jam from Midway. They licensed Mortal Kombat. They had a baseball license. They did all these licenses. And so we had gotten the rights had lapsed, and we had out negotiated Acclaim for those rights. And The Rock calls us up and he says, "Mike, I have to tell you, I just played the new Acclaim Wrestling, and that is not the most electrifying game in sports entertainment." He said, "I really look forward to working with you guys and making sure that the people's elbow is captured appropriately, and that the rock bottom really layeth the smacketh down on the like it's on a voicemail. Like it's the most beautiful, wonderful thing in the world."
That's
and it was
awesome.
it's great when you meet your heroes and they turn out to be really good people, because that's often not the case. But we worked really closely with The Rock and Stone Cold and Vince and Linda and Steph and Shane O'Mac, and like everybody we met in that organization were just absolute consummate professionals, right? Including some of the more kind of ribald guys like Billy Gunn and Scott Hall, R.I.P. Scott Hall. Like they were all pros at what they did, and it was a real pleasure to work with them. And I think it's reflected in the products that THQ was able to put out at the time. It also helps with world-class development talent. So that's the lesson I would give to your entire audience, is that, people have thought I'm incredible when I work with great developers. And when I work with terrible developers, they think I'm the worst producer in the world and I don't know what I'm doing. And, so you're only as good as your developers. Make sure you work with great developers. That's
amen to that.
Right.
I'm going to put it back up just to run through a few more. Trying to get through give us a long list to go through. Simpsons, that was a great game. A lot of the SpongeBob games. The Star Wars games really impressed me, because those are some of my just favorite games from growing up. The early Maddens. Rugrats movie. Rugrats Scavenger Hunt was a great game.
It was a great game. That was a ton of fun. One of the first board games on N64.
Yeah, it was like, in my opinion, kind of what they used as a guide to make
Mario
the Monopoly that ended up, or even Mario Party too. It was basically like an early version of that.
Right.
Or I guess the first.
Yeah. MK, Madden.
Yeah, all these sports games. Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat 3.
3. Yeah. Bunch of great Mortal Kombat stories. There you go. There's the Maddens, LaRussa. And then design credit, which is always I'm super proud of, because I'm not a classically trained game designer, but to either design a game from the ground up, or like I did with Tough Man Contest, you get design credit. Like I got on all the footballs. It was
nice. That's awesome.
Really humbled by that experience.
And the Super Monkey Ball Jr., I'm not entirely sure what the thanks means exactly.
I'll tell you a great Super Monkey Ball story. If you want to go down a little bit of a nostalgic gamer rabbit hole. So Super Monkey Ball, when it came out on the GameCube, right, it was just really cool. The playfield was all tilty, and you had to control it almost like this physics-based gameplay. It was a ton of fun. You're a monkey inside a ball. And it really was a surprise kind of sleeper cult classic. It looked like, or felt like, it'd be developed by a AAA developer. Like it was that innovative and cool and fun. It's like, whoa, this is so great. So they were riding really, really high. I think it was on the GameCube. It may have been on the Dreamcast.
It was on GameCube.
Okay, on GameCube.
I played that like crazy as a kid. Amazing game.
So we went to Sega Japan and we negotiated at THQ a 10 game deal with Sega Japan. We said, look, we want to take 10 of these licenses, right? All the ones you would think about, Virtua Fighter and Outrun and Power Drift and, Shinobi and, on and on, just all the classics, right? And we said, we want to build games on the Nintendo handheld. And so we had this really cool, there's this group called Digital Eclipse. There's a developer in kind of the East Bay of San Francisco. They had built this tech demo where they actually had the playfield with mocked up, not true physics, but mocked up, fake physics of a monkey inside of a ball rolling around collecting bananas on this 3D tilting playfield. And the designer and lead engineer of Super Monkey Ball. So we go in there, and in Japan, you have to very much ask for permission. You don't just get the rights from some business development person, which is typically how it works in a lot of places. But here we had to go and ask each person, will you bless this deal? Will you bless this deal? Will you bless this deal? So we're doing the big tour, and we're in AM2 Studios where Super Monkey Ball was built. And Yu Suzuki famously runs kind of, AM2, but it wasn't with you. It was with one of his number 2 guy. And I said, I'd like the rights to publish Super Monkey Ball on this Nintendo handheld. I believe it was, I think it was the DS. In fact, I know it was the DS. And he looked at me and he said through a translator, I'm sorry, the DS is, not nearly powerful enough to do my game justice. And so therefore you cannot get the rights to it. And I won't let it go out because I'm very proud of what this is. And, I do not want to tarnish my reputation. Like,
sure. Yeah.
You ask a yes or no question, you get like a second, which is very Japanese. And it's the beautiful thing about the Japanese people. They can't just tell you yes or no. They have to go into this whole soliloquy, which is amazing. And I love that. I expected that. So I was like, wow, I asked yes or no. And he's just going on and on and on and on and on. That must mean no. So it came back to me. And so I said, I totally understand. All due respect, we have a technology demo. We'd like to show it to you if you don't mind. He's like, kind of like, whatever. So I slid the handheld across the table. He played it. He played it. And he put it back down. And he said some things as a translator. And the guy came back and goes, when can this be done? I'm like, 8 months. He's like, yeah, do it. Like, it was great. It's like, it's like, this will never work. And he's like, oh, when can you get finished? Like, it was such a
it's a switch.
Right. Well, it's just great. And look, it really made us feel proud and made us feel really happy that they loved what we did. Because the thing that we've always said is at our core is we want to build great games. A lot of times when you get a license, right, a lot of companies historically in this industry are really, really good at taking a license and let it do all the heavy lifting from a gameplay standpoint. But we never wanted to just rely on a license. We want to say this game is objectively great. It happens to be WWE branded. Or this game is really, really great. It happened to be based on Virtua Tennis. Like, the great game had to be at its core, which is what we're saying in the Web3 space. Like, we're putting out blockchain Brawlers. It's a great game first and foremost. It happens to have a wrestling skin on it, personalities and archetypes that you might recognize, but it's Richard Garfield designed. It is gorgeously animated. It is wonderfully kind of, monetized or player focused. And so, that's really, really core to what we're all about.
Awesome. So seeing as you've worked on so many amazing games, I'm super interested to know, like, I guess specifically the ones you've worked on, what was your favorite? And then kind of just in general, what's your favorite game genre?
Well, I'm a dude, right? So I love action games, first and foremost. I play Myst, I played story products, I play Match 3, I play them all because I'm also a student of the industry. But if you ask me what am I doing on a Friday or Saturday night when I've got, alone time and I've got, an endless amount of pizza and beer, I'm probably playing League of Legends, or I'm playing something where I'm killing somebody, right? Or I'm getting killed by somebody. Like, that's who I am at my core. So the great thing about me growing up is, as a huge degenerate football video gamer, like, to get to work on Madden, I would have to say it's probably my greatest work experience of all times. It was literally a dream come true. I was just a tester when I started on Madden. And in the earliest version I got to test, it was, in the old days, you used to bring in your program and you'd work until you're done. So it's like 3:30 in the morning and we're trying to get, we're trying to get Gold Master candidate out to Sega the next day. And they're literally going to take the code that I have approved and they're going to print up 1 million cartridges and they're going to get them manufactured in Japan. They're going to come back. We're going to sell them at Thanksgiving. That's how it worked. So the programmer looked at me and he's like, oh, you just tired? I'm like, well, I'm kind of depressed. He goes, well, why are you depressed? I'm like, well, pass interference was really exploited last year because the offensive player could draw it on the defensive player.
Right.
and it was an exploit, and everybody uses it, and it's a competitive game, and I hate to lose that way. He goes, well, let's just fix it. I'm like, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, you tell me how it should work, and I'll just change it. And I'm like,
and it's going out the next day, right?
Right. Like not the next day, going out in 9 hours.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
When Japan wakes up, it's like there's
Yeah.
So it's 1 p.m. California time is 8 in the morning the next day or 9 in the morning the next day when Sega Japan comes in. That's like this whole thing. And I said, dude, I'm like this 23-year-old kid. I'm nobody. You want me to change the design of pass interference, like the thing that, like, fundamental to playing defense,
Right.
a game that's heavily passing oriented. So he said, look, let's look at how it works. I'll tell you why it's getting called when the offensive player is doing certain things. You tell me, you design how it should work. He said, and I'll do it. He said, play it for all your bosses and your boss's bosses. And if they don't like it, it's 30 seconds. I can just comment it all out and can go back to the way it was. So, me, I'm like high as a kite. I'm like, let's go, son. So you look at all the variables, just this guy's facing like this. Here's the collision impact value. Here's, is the ball in the air, not in the air, head back, is the head looking, like all these things. I said, okay. And we stepped like da. And then we did a bunch of revs, tested it. And by 4:30, like an hour later, like it felt really tight. It should get called when these things happened. It didn't get called when these old things happened. And of course, me, I'm just so on cloud nine. So I don't go to sleep. I'm now at like 36 straight hours. I go to my boss next morning, who rolls in convenient like at 9:30. I'm like, oh my God, we are on the clock.
Yeah.
Let's go, right? And so he comes in, and I said to him, listen, I've changed something fundamental about the game, but I'm not going to tell you what. And I think it's incredible. Can we play it and you tell me what you think? He's like, yeah, what'd you change? I'm not going to tell you. You just have to play it, how it feels. He's like, okay, fair. So we play a game, and we're, by the way, he used to be the biggest cheater in the world.
Yeah.
He used to get all the time. And like 2 passing plays in, he's like, 3, 4 passing plays in. He's like, did you change pass interference? I said, I did. And he got this look like across his face. I was expecting, you're fired. But he didn't. He said, well, tell me how it works. And I said, okay, well, let me tell you why it used to be an exploit, because these are all the things that add up to it getting flagged on the defender. And this is how the offensive player could call it every single time, repeatable 98% without fail. He's like, that sounds bad. I'm like, but here's how it works now. He said, okay, let's play again. So we played 2 more games. It's now like 11 o'clock, right? Like, I'm positive, right, exactly. I'm positive everything else is clean. There's no bugs in there. And I found some nasty, funny bugs that are in the older versions. We can talk about it at some other point. It's not worth talking. But he's like, I approve it. Let's go. And so here is me, this new kid to the industry. And I've changed one thing that every single player who plays this game forever is now positively impacted. Like, that's so imprinted on me. And so the learning or the takeaway that sticks with me today. In fact, I made a very decision today that's based in a similar kind of, DNA that I have, is do things that favor the player, right? This is a terrible user experience before, getting like, I didn't draw pass interference, they flagged on it. Like, I'm getting unnecessarily penalized. Like, let's prove all those things. And that has always served me really well in my career. So Madden, I've got a soft spot in my heart for it. It's an esports game. It's a sports game. It's competitive. So Sam, that's who I am. That's what I'm all about. And that's what I like to do. And then when I got to play them to build games on Facebook, they're like, oh, we build games for women in their 40s. I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I know how to build games where people want to rip each other's heads off and show them they're still beating heart. They're like, oh, this is not that. Good luck. I'm like, and there's a lot of great lessons that came from that experience as well.
Yeah, I bet there's a big learning curve trying to build.
Some people would, I'm sorry, Sam. Some people would say that that playing only Madden doesn't make you a gamer. What would you have to say to that?
Look, it really doesn't matter if you're a one trick or not, right? If you're a degenerate Madden 24/7 person, you're an absolute gamer. I'll give you a funny story. Like, I used to have people all the time tell me that women who play Candy Crush aren't hardcore gamers because it's not a hardcore game.
I would argue they're a more hardcore gamer than you are, TD, playing their Candy Crush. I don't think you play Madden enough.
I don't play Madden enough. You're right.
Well, look, I will tell you that may not be a hardcore game because it's match 3, but that is a hardcore gamer's mentality. And that's important. Like, if somebody is playing the game over and over and over again, they're obsessed with it. It doesn't matter if the mechanic is casual. right?
Right.
The mentality of the player, that's what you want to understand. And as a live operator, as a producer, as a content creator that we are, we want to understand the mentality of our audience. And so you can give them a match 3 game all day, but if it's match 3 head-to-head, like say Super Puzzle Fighter was, Super Turbo Puzzle Fighter, which is a great Capcom kind of, gem matching head-to-head sort of Tetris meets columns, if you know those references. Like it's unbelievably competitive, but you're just, stacking gems of the same color or the same type. Like, yeah, it's really competitive and it's a ton of fun. It's a very hardcore game, but wrapped in a casual mechanic.
Good point. I had a family member who was an avid Tetris player. I don't think I know anybody who's played more Tetris. And she played the old school Tetris on the Super Nintendo and played it like forever. Like I think she still plays on that same Super Nintendo probably.
Somewhere I have the Tengen version of Tetris, which is the unlicensed version that came over from Russia, that was outlawed and banned, and it's worth a ton of money. It's somewhere in my house. I don't know where, but it was always kind of revered as like, oh, the 8-bit Tengen Tetris will forever be the best version. I don't know if that's still true. I haven't followed Tetris closely, but
I wonder if it's tough to find on eBay now because of that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I have it somewhere. I also have a version of the original Madden shrink wrap still, which I think is worth a little bit. But
what?
I still have some of the OG Pokemon games shrink wrapped.
Nice.
Yeah, that's like my one thing where I have.
Hang on to it, Sam.
Yeah, because when I was little, I lost all of my Pokemon games, so I rebought as many as I could, and then left half of them in the box because I was like, I've played those through. I don't really need them yet. Like, I'll open them when I need them. And
you're talking about like Sapphire, Emerald, Pokemon Diamond, Red, Blue.
Unluckily, those were all the ones I opened. Because I had played through all the Heart Gold, Soul Silver era games. So those ones I still have wrapped. And then the older ones, although those other ones still sell decently well as unwrapped.
Yeah.
And then I also have a ton of copies because I was the kid that would go into GameStop and buy the used versions so that I could buy the hacked game where somebody got every Pokemon and then gave the game back to GameStop.
Yeah, that's great. That is great.
So, Michael, what brought you into the sphere of NFTs and crypto?
Yeah, look, I think that the thing that has always, how I see the world is I've gotten to do. I've really lived kind of my life is an embarrassment of riches. I've gotten to do everything that you can imagine. I've got to, be on the sideline for a professional football game. I've gone to a bunch of different Super Bowls. I've gone to every single major sporting event. I've been on, film shoots and, music sessions with recording artists of some of the biggest recording artists in the world. And so, in terms of professionally kind of gratifying things for me that are sort of singularly kind of beneficial, I don't really look at my career that way anymore. I look at what can I do for the greater good, right? Like, how can I give back? How can I do things for others? And the promise of Web3 is so powerful in that regard. Like, it really speaks to me at my core of who I am. And so when I was talking to a friend of mine who, runs a large studio at Amazon Gaming, he said, the world is going to be play to earn. And this is back in kind of, September, October. He's like, it's a really powerful thing. You should look into it. And I did. And I got really compelled by it. And another friend of mine, runs Wax. And he's like, look, we're going to get into, I said, what are you doing in P2E? He's like, oh, we're going to build a bunch of P2E games. It's going to be fast follows and copies and clones. Let's take just a bunch of old Flash games. I'm like, well, if you're going to build games, don't take old Flash games and just rebrand them. Like, let's do something different. He's like, hey, do you want to come in and just do this? I'm like, do I? Maybe I do. He's like, yeah, if you believe in the world where players can get to own all their own stuff, he said, you should come in and build a roadmap and build content and figure out what those things are. I'm like, okay, great. So I came in, he said, look, we have this game. It's a wrestling game. It's based on kind of 80s nostalgic wrestlers that everybody recognizes. And it's not going to be licensed, but this is where we're starting. And where you take it is completely up to you. And I said, so we have tell me about the Wax blockchain. It's like, well, it's the most highly transacted blockchain in the world. There's no gas fees. Transactions take seconds, not minutes, hours, or days. We have, at that time, we have 9 million Wax Cloud wallet users. So you've got a very engaged audience. I'm like, when's the other shoe going to drop? Like, this all sounds too good to be true. He's like, no. He's like, and we have no idea what games to build, but we know you. Well, I shouldn't say no idea. We have an idea you may not agree with, But if you can come in and shape that vision, you can be our head of studio or chief gaming officer, which is my actual official title, chief gaming officer. So I looked at Brawlers and I'm like, this is really clever and compelling. And as long as people have patience, like we'll build an incredible game that's fun to play. But great games take a while to play. It's like, well, we're going to try to get this up quick. I'm like, all right, well, then I'll start to manage expectations around the mining phase versus the crafting phase versus the PvP phase versus the esports phase versus the we're going to take over the world phase. But the thing that was at the core of all of those was we wanted to build a game. We wanted to build a North Star that said to the entire world of players and publishers and developers, this is what a great game looks like on this technology where players are outside of a walled garden and they can do with whatever they want their stuff. Now, notice I didn't say cryptocurrency. I did not say I did not say NFTs, because all those things I think people are instantly dismissive of the space if you speak in that language. So the language we use is very intentional. We say play to own, not play to earn, because earning is a byproduct of a great game. It's not a goal. And a lot of people say, well, when are you going to make my money back? I don't know. Like, don't you care about that? I actually don't. Well, nobody's going to play your game if they can't make a profit. I don't know. There's 3 billion people in the world who play games and never So
right.
You know, that's the funny thing about all these chat rooms you go into in this space. Everybody in whether it's Discord or Telegram for the most part are smarter than you, and they'll tell you they're smarter than you and that you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, okay, it's like being on Twitter. I always go to Twitter and I realize I'm the dumbest person on Twitter because literally everybody on Twitter is smarter than me and they have no problem telling me that. Like, that's a lot of what these crypto bros are all about. Like, you don't know. If people can't profit, they'll never play your game, and that's just the facts. Like, that's like that's the cold hard truth. I'm like, oh, what about all those people who play Fortnite and make no money? It's like, well, they're morons. Like,
not only do they not make money, they're spending thousands of dollars a year.
They're spending way more. Fortnite did like how many billions of dollars in revenue for just all free to play? Like, it's amazing that people argue these numerical, absolute, unassailable metaphysical certitudes that are like you just cannot challenge. Like, well, wait a minute, there's so much. There is literally a Mount Everest of evidence to suggest you're 100% wrong, but you can't argue with these people. It's like arguing with your wife. You will never win that argument. So as soon as you know that, it's like, fine, let's just, you know what? I'm going to do what I'm going to do because it's what I've done for my entire career. And I'm going to build something I think is really fun. And I'm going to let you own all your stuff. I'm going to make it easy for you to buy it and sell it or trade it or give it away. I'm going to do all these things that I think that at the core of what you're asked to do with those things has real value and has real appeal and has scarcity and has all these things built in. But I'm not leading with profit. I'm not leading with earning. I'm not leading with how much can you make, how quickly. I'm leading it with what is the entertainment value prop, right? You get to do this. You're allowed to be a part of this and building a community that's helpful, right? Now all of a sudden people are caring more about why they're here and they care more about what they're doing. They're not singularly focused on that paradigm of I have to make all my money back as soon as I can. Otherwise I'm upside down. Like, okay, great. And if you're a gambler, you will lose all of your money all the time at Las Vegas because the odds are consistently stacked against you. You think you can beat the house, you can't, right? Those casinos look that way for a reason, right? Not because the players always win. So if you think that the industry is all about putting the players in a position to win, like across the board consistently forever, that paradigm is never going to work. It's just not. Like, pay to earn is dead. It is not a sustainable model. But what is play to own, right? And you can have an incredible experience that way where developers, publishers, and players all share in the monetary gains. And if you happen to be profitable, break even, good for you. If you're not, that's okay. Some of your gaming efforts have been subsidized. You're not out completely. It's a graduated scale. And so I think people have to accept it's not this binary outcome, which is what it is today, right? Either you've made a ton of money, you've lost a ton of money in the play to earn space, which we don't have any interest in being a part of.
I think there's another aspect to play to own too, where you can kind of like sell out of a game that you don't want to play anymore. Like, say, I played this game for 6 months and this new game comes out and I really want to play that instead. Like, I can actually at least recoup some of what I put in to play that game and use it to play the next game rather than like always having to pay $60 for the game.
Yeah, look, it's interesting because the other thing too that we don't talk about a lot, Sam, which I think is really powerful that nobody mentions, and I try to bring it up on all the talks I do. So this may be repeating something you've heard me say before, but it's this whole notion of philanthropic behaviors, right? So I'm in a game. I'm in blockchain Brawlers. I have all these NFTs. I have these Brawlers. I have these really cool skins. I have all this stuff. It's all worth real world money, and I could sell it. And I spent a long time grinding, leveling up, acquiring all these things. Like, I have all this time invested. And my inventory of things, like in any game, is a reflection of how much time I've spent.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, I can sell all that, or I have a buddy's like, dude, I want to start gaming with you, but I don't know anything about this game. You've been in it for 2 years. How do I catch up? Like, okay, go to the store, spend all this money or spend all this time. And in 2 years, maybe you'll be where I am today. It's like, no, you want to short circuit that, right? It's like, I'm going to give you stuff that I own. I'm going to just give it to you because I can, because I'm not violating the terms of service. I'm going to give you things that have real value. And you as a player know that I'm giving you things that have a monetary value. And yet I choose to just give it to you because you're my friend and I want to game with you and I want us to be closer. So now all of a sudden there's this real social good at not only am I giving you things that have value that are worth money, but you're receiving things and you know you're getting things of value. So look at us have this relationship that's like, oh, dude, he gave me like $300 worth of stuff. He didn't have to. He could have sold it, but he gave it to me. What a good dude. What a good friend. And now all of a sudden we're playing and our levels are much closer and I'm not grinding. And now, because you like to game, like we all like to game together. Nobody wants to play in a vacuum most times, right? Like if you look at World of Warcraft, which is probably the most social game in the world, like people didn't play that game for 15 to 20 years because there was 20 years of innovation. They played it because these relationships that they had, they all like to do the same thing. And so that's what we're allowing for is now you don't have to go to these digital dark alleys and trade stuff or go onto eBay and hope your account doesn't get banned. Just give it to people and let's all game together and let's shallow out that learning curve and you know, let's go, you know, dungeon crawl or let's go PvP together. Like let's go battle royale it out. Like you and me, let's go, you know, and instead of just like, you know, I'm in this to make a profit. And that's this very kind of emotionless transaction. It's like, no, I've got stuff of value. I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to feel good about myself.
Excellent. Yeah.
Somebody was DMing somebody else about a project in chat. So I wanted to go see what's going on there. I got a little distracted by that.
I see Timo 24/7 asking questions, and I just want him to know that I'm going to ban his question just like I would ban him in League Champ Select. So no Timos. If you understand the reference of Timo in League of Legends, he's a beloved or an absolutely hated character. So I'm very anti-Timo because he is a total pain in the ass to deal with. But maybe this Timo is much nicer. I don't know.
Yeah, here's a good question from Recurrier. So BCB is a card style game. What other style of games is Wax Studios looking into?
Yes. So let's be clear. So Blockchain Brawlers is an esports game. It has card play at its core, but it's an esports game. It's a competitive head-to-head game. So if you look at the other things that we're doing, a lot of the things that we do are very PvP based. So Music Mogul is a player one versus many PvP based game. If you look at, we have an unannounced game that'll be announced. We actually have 2 unannounced games. One will be announced in late September, and I think the other will be announced in late October. They're both also PvP, not meaning head-to-head, I'm going to kill you, but meaning competition-based, right? So think about all the things where you can compete for, you know, global prizes, tournaments, you know, things of value, things of scarcity, things of allow you to kind of, you know, digitally flex on one another, things that have prestige associated with them. I will tease one of the gameplay loops that we have, which we think is super interesting, is in this PvP game. It's kind of a raiding style game, like you know, my army is going to fight your army. I'm overly simplifying. And think, oh, great. So you beat up my army, you steal all my resources. Is that how it works? Yeah, except you can't sell those resources immediately, the ones you steal. You have to sit on them for a second. And a second maybe means 24 hours. It means the other person can come back and take them. It's like, well, then I'll never attack. I'll just sit here and I'll just mine a currency inside of my own world, my own biodome, my sphere or whatever. It's like, well, right, but you can't actually sell those currencies. You only use them to upgrade your ability to steal from other players. So it's players stealing from players, stealing from players, stealing from players. It's like this massive hate machine. Right? It's just like, God damn it, I can't believe it. And it's like, well, you could bubble a little bit and protect some of your stuff, but you've got to be in there and you've got to be, you know, throwing elbows left and right, because this is not for the faint of heart. And people want to compete that way, we believe. And we're going to put this really fun kind of, you know, construct of competing, attacking, and pillaging from one another, where it's, you've always got to be engaged and you've got to really be kind of, you know, on your toes. You can't just sit back and run a script and say, oh, I don't need the UI. I'm going to just write straight to the smart contract and, you know, mine a currency and I'm going to get rich and I'm going to be automated. Not like, no, this experience that we haven't announced yet is going to not be for the faint of heart. And we think it's going to be really cool and interesting. But that's really kind of at the core of what we're all about, is things that are really, really fun to do, that are innovative and interesting, that people haven't been allowed to do historically. And so that's how I would categorize the games in the Wax portfolio, is allowing people to do things that they've always wanted to do, or do in a different way, right? Because you can make the argument that, you know, gaming is a lot like Hollywood, where they say you can only write 7 different movie scripts. Like, gaming is very similar. There's not a ton of, you know, new ideas, but we're trying to innovate where we can. So, but not for the sake of innovation, but for meaningful kind of player experiences. Great question, by the way. Not an easy or short answer, so I apologize.
It's a good answer though.
And so here's just, I wanted to just read this comment here from New Next Crypto. So that's what I love about Wax, talking about the philanthropy. You don't see this in any other blockchain. We love just giving gifts, NFTs to each other, and play games and collect stuff together. I've given plenty of NFTs to strangers, and I got some myself. Best community by far.
He's right, or she's right. They're right. They're absolutely right. You know, we when we hit our 10 millionth wallet, kind of late December of last year, early January, I think it was, we airdropped 10 million NFTs to every single wallet. No other chain could do that. No other chain would do that. And we just did it. Is a little bit of a flex, sure, but we also wanted to say thank you. And so in Blockchain Brawlers, as an example, we airdropped on the last day when the mining phase ended. We dropped a mining, a pre-mint mining badge to all 8,800 of our players. So just as a thanks, like, thank you. You know, we didn't charge them for it. There's no utility to it. It's just literally our way of saying we see you and we appreciate you, and it means a lot. And I think that the thing that I've learned from free-to-play games is that you have to give players, you know, a lot of things for free. You really do. You can't be afraid to give away everything that you possibly can give away all the time, because it shows that you care about them. And at some point they're like, wow, you know, these guys really do care about me. Like, there's empathy that I think is often overlooked as one of the more powerful things you can do as a game developer, is be empathetic to your audience. And empathy really, really matters. You can't just pay it lip service. You actually got to follow through on it.
Yeah. And if I can just brag on Sam a little bit, you know, that's what I think he's most well known for, is how just unbelievably generous and philanthropic he's been.
It's fun giving people stuff, especially like the whole comment about it being a way to bring other people into games. That's something that, like, with my friends and cousins growing up, we've all like, there are 2 groups, family members, and then I have another IRL group that I play games with. And a big thing that we do is, like, if somebody finds a game they really like, they just, like, we'll buy it for everybody in the group to go try it. And if you like it, then you pay them for what they paid for the game for you. And if you don't like it, then, like, they paid money for you to try a game you didn't like. And that's
the first time I played Magic, somebody gave me a deck. Hey, here's one of my old decks. I'm like, oh, thanks. Okay, whatever. I was like, here's the rules. I'm like, I don't get it. He's like, just ride with me for a second. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Again, it was very social here. We're playing kind of back and forth. He was teaching me. I was feeling really good about it. I did the same thing, you know, a few months later when I got comfortable and I started creating my own deck metas and so forth. In fact, I had it's going to be totally random, but I had a Word of Command Arabian Nights beta card that I gave a former boss of mine who had done amazing things for me in my career, like absolutely amazing things for me in my career. He said, my kids are at the age they're really getting into Magic. Yeah, this is now, like, you know, Magic, like 25 years old, 28 years old, whatever it is. He goes, I have no idea what to buy. Do you have any Magic recommendations? I said, let me send you a pack of like 6 cards. He's like, is that enough? I'm like, oh, trust me, it's enough. And so I sent him these 6 really rare cards. And he sent me a text, like, literally at 8 a.m. Christmas morning. He goes, I don't know what you sent me to give to my kids, but they do. And thank you. Like, he made them both
awesome
that day. Like, it feels so good to give back, right? And to say that, yeah, I could sell these, but I feel so much better, you know, doing these things in other ways. And so that's very much kind of who we are as an organization. And I'm glad that resonates with the 2 of you as well. And you're
and that's kind of like the greater joy of gaming, is the social aspect, not the monetary aspect.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it's great that that's becoming a thing in P2E, because for me, like, that's always been a dream of mine, is making money playing games. I used to do it playing Rocket League until my account started getting shut down, which is a big reason why I love Wax. Finally, no more shutting my accounts down, but like, that whole aspect is great and all, but we can't forget about the whole community aspect and working together to build a game, because no game is anything without a player base.
Yeah, look, it's, you know, I think the thing that you're going to see more and more, and people, they may talk about it, may give lip service to it. I think we really, really follow through is the aspect of community. Like you're playing on a browser, right? You don't have any global chat up. Like the chatting, the smack talking, the philanthropy, they all happen in Discord or in Telegram or in comment sections of live streams. Like that community part is so unbelievably vital. If you don't foster and cultivate that, and you don't lay this foundation for where people feel comfortable to come in, and one of the hardest things for me as a new player in the space was I didn't know how to play any game in here. They're like, open a wallet and then go to this marketplace and then go to decentralized exchange and then buy this token. Here's the token symbol. And you've got to open a cryptocurrency, but what state are you in? And I was like, wait, what? And I went into a channel of a game that I wanted to play, and they were not super helpful, right? So I'm like, okay, well, that's disappointing. So we learned from our scar tissue. But eventually I got in and said, okay, I'm going to, because I always knew that community, it was all about community. It was all about being player focused. So I said, any game that we build, we're going to have an active community. It's going to be kind of well vetted. It's going to be curated. It's going to be monitored really closely. But it's also going to be it's going to be a safe place. You can come in and you can ask a really dumb question, right? Because everybody at some point asks a dumb question. And if you have that dumb question, probably somebody else has that same dumb question. So let's be really forthcoming with our information. Let's not shame people, because we all wanted the same thing, right? We want to be part of a great gaming experience together. So there you go.
That was how I met TD, was asking dumb questions about Upland. I mean, I was asking the most simplest questions in the game, like the 2 + 2 = 4
right.
of Upland. Yeah. And he was like, he never got angry at me. He never laughed at me. Right. He actually walked me through it.
Well, first of all, shame on any game developer that makes you go to a community to ask a dumb question, right? That's kind of user interface or user onboarding 101. But I respect or understand or appreciate that it does happen. I'd like to think that Brawlers had one of the best kind of onboardings in the world in terms of a player. What do I do? Is like, we hold your hand. You're on the rails. You cannot get lost. You do this. You click this. Nice. You activate this. Now you're off to the races.
So let me ask you this. One of my favorite things to do from a web dev perspective or any art is it's always to either hide something or pay some homage through visual or hidden artwork, aka Easter eggs.
Yeah, where's this going? Okay, go on.
Yeah. What can you tell me about or maybe I guess your history with Easter eggs, and can we expect any? God.
I have so many. There's so many Easter eggs in every single game I put out. It's not even funny. I can give you a recent one, and I can give you a kind of a really old school one.
Yeah. And then I guess are there any that we can look forward to in BCB?
So in BCB, there's a little tiny Easter egg that somebody finally noticed. So we had a character go, like in wrestling, from babyface to heel, which means from good guy to bad guy, right? Baby faces are the good guys. We had a guy called Scotty White-Eye, and he was happy, he was shiny, and he was the best gold producer in the game, and everybody loved Scotty White-Eye because gold NFTs were selling for a really high price, and he had the highest drop rate, which was really counterintuitive because he was a common asset. You're like, wait a minute, this guy cost me $300, and I just had something drop 10% of the time that's worth $400. Wow. So everybody indexed into Scotty. So I said, I have to nerf Scotty. And there's a whole reason why he dropped it at that level, but I had to nerf him. So I nerfed him, and he was much more in line with what the economy allowed for. But after we nerfed him shortly, and because there were so many of him in the environment, we did a burn event where we got rid of him. And then we took it, so there was a week that he couldn't be crafted. He used to wear this classic fleece gray jacket with black cuffs, right? It was a lot like this, is this really iconic gray fleece jacket he would wear. And so we brought back him as a babyface called Naughty Scotty. So Naughty Scotty, super naughty, right? We wrote this storyline that he got hit by a car, and who did it? Was it one of the other brawlers? But Naughty Scotty's given the double bird to the camera. Right? Like literally Naughty Scotty, like he's F the world. Everybody hated me once I got nerfed, right? We made it all work with the economy. Like we made the narrative and the storylines work with the economy balances and changes. Like it was brilliant, if I do say so myself. Well, in the brand new version we released a couple of weeks ago, there's this new thing called the armbar, which is the main out in the Brawlerverse. And in the trash can, a trash can is, again, something you can hit somebody over the head with in blockchain brawlers. In the trash can is just a little tiny bit of the old fleece coat gray sleeve cuff. It's just barely hanging in there. And clearly Naughty Scotty's in the bar getting hammered, right? A lot of people don't realize that the old Scotty's coat has been thrown in the trash. Somebody said, "Hey, wait a minute, is that the original Scotty's jackets in the trash?" Oh, I get it. Like they felt really smart and they got it.
Right.
So that's probably the most recent kind of Easter egg that we've put on there. But I've put so many Easter eggs in games, like in the baseball game I made for EA. I had one where the field was completely ice and all the physics were ice based. And so a ball would just roll forever until you literally, like normally a ball hits the wall and it stops rolling.
Right.
The ball would roll forever. Or one time the ball was a Super Ball, had Super Bowl physics. So you could hit a ground rule double that started off as an infield chopper, but just keep bouncing, go over the wall. You could throw, you could do all kinds of fun stuff. There's a boxing game I did called Tough Man Contest where putting in certain codes, you could have your opponent be drawn 32 pixels lower. So it looked like you were fighting a little person and the only way to hit them was body blows would punch them in the face. And I did that as a joke because a friend of mine, a guy named John Shappert, who famously ran Zynga Worldwide Development and he was a COO at Xbox once upon a time. He was a programmer at this company called Visual Concepts. And he and I had a friendly rivalry. And so I put in, his nickname was always the Weasel. So I put in what's called Weasel mode. And he was really short in real life. So I drew your opponent really short as an homage to John Shappert, which I shared with him the moment it got published in Toys R Us, Walmart, and Best Buy. I said, "Let me show you what's in this game now, John." He's like, "God damn it." So all kinds of Easter eggs everywhere I go.
That's one of my favorite parts of games.
Yeah.
It
shows that you care, right? Like it absolutely shows that you care enough to give that above and beyond. You're not just like this emotionless, like check the box, like, yep, that game's done, on to the next game. Like you want to inject some of your personality, right? It's a game. You want it to be fun. You want it to allude to certain things. And if you even look at, I'm sorry, blowing up my text messages for some reason. I'm sure I have notifications off. I'm not sure what's going on. User error.
Okay.
Look, there is, in everything from, Toasty and Mortal Kombat to, Smash TV, if you remember that old arcade game, like Easter eggs have been around in games forever. And so I know a lot of the history, and it's something that I always like to make sure that I carry forward as well in the products that I build.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think some of my favorite ones were in Mario growing up. I don't even know if I could remember all of them, or if even all of them were Easter eggs or part of the gameplay, because especially some of the older Marios, like the gameplay itself kind of felt like an Easter egg to figure out.
Yeah, there was very few Easter eggs in Nintendo first party products. There was a lot of hidden design elements that you maybe didn't find certain rooms or certain, coins or certain drops. Like just mysteriously jump here on the screen, a coin box appears above your head kind of moment. Those aren't Easter eggs as much as really kind of clever designs. The Easter eggs are like, as an example, a very funny story on NBA Jam, if you guys remember that game.
Oh yeah.
So Mark Trammell, the programmer and designer of it, was from Detroit, and
right.
And Midway is from Chicago, and he hates the Bulls with a flaming passion. So
I know where you're going with this one. Yep.
Yeah, he said if Detroit and Chicago are ever playing, not only are Chicago stats lowered, but he didn't tell you. But if it is a last second shot and the Bulls take it to win, or Detroit takes it to win, the Detroit shot goes in 100% of the time, doesn't matter where you're standing. And the Chicago shot never goes in, doesn't matter where you're standing.
Right.
You under the basket for Chicago and the layup.
That's hilarious.
And that's just how that's coded. And he has admitted that. And it's very funny.
Oh, yeah.
It's very true. He's like, I hate the Bulls. I'll never beat my Pistons.
I love that.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I've never heard of an Easter egg like that, but that's a pretty great one.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times Easter eggs come from people's personal biases, you'll find.
Oh, thank you, Recurrier, for the cheers.
Yeah.
There was one quote from, or I guess it was a block of quotes from the NFT Insider interview that I just kind of want to bring up because I thought it was an awesome quote. So I'll just start it here.
Go ahead.
She said there are 3 questions that they should really be asking themselves, kind of referring to
players relative to
players.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to understand the potential success of a P2E game, the questions are my intentions aligned with that of the game team, and what evidence exists that reflect this reality? What is the track record of success of the team building this game? What are they going to grow? What are they doing to grow and engage with the community across social media on a consistent basis? If the answer to any of these questions is no, or it is unclear, then I think the risk profile increases quite substantially. I just thought that was a really great way of wording that. Especially at the end, just saying like risk profile increases doesn't say like that you have to stay away. It's just it's a higher risk investment at that point.
I appreciate that, Sam. The thing that I did when I came into the space is I had no idea where to start looking, because discovery is terrible in this industry.
Right.
Oh, this is a new project, or this is the best performing project, or this is the most critically acclaimed, but this one has the most users. It's like there's things now, third-party sites that do all that stuff. But I thought, if I'm a player, one of the first things I want to do, because the price of entry at that time, and to a certain extent today, is still really high. So how do you get comfort around what that initial investment is? And the traditional gaming space is free play. Well, I'll just download it. If I like it, I'll monetize. Like, that doesn't exist here, or very rarely does it exist, right? And it used to be this base of speculation, like, oh, this white paper looks really good, or these tokenomics I kind of understand. Like,
right.
That's nothing to base any kind of kind of quote unquote investment in, right? And I
right.
I really bristle at the notion of it's an investment, but I understand that's how people think. So the thing that I say is, so we talk about, are your interests aligned with the developer, right? Like, that's really important. So if we take Peter Molyneux, right, with the Landmark, which he did a land sale back in, what was it, January, February, whatever it was, right? He literally sold $153 million worth of land. Great, good for Peter. But Peter's got all your money. Like, what risk does Peter have? Peter has no risk. What risk do you have? Everything. What if he never shipped a product?
Right.
Like, well, how do you avoid that? That's unavoidable. He wanted to sell land. We had to buy land. We want to buy that land. Well, you don't have to buy land, first of all. You can wait to see if the project's good. And Peter certainly has a dotted or checkered track record in terms of what he's delivered early in his career. Amazing. Later in his career, kind of maybe not so much, or really highly inconsistent. But there is a line. So one of the things we did on Blockchain Brawlers as an example is we said, look, we're going to sell 300 starter packs or 500 starter packs, whatever the number was. We said, you see, we've got 30,000 people on our Discord. We could sell more than 300, I promise you, right? Whatever the number was. But we didn't. We said to the players, we need you to actually craft NFTs to sell to other players. And we will clip the ticket on every single second market sale. But like, wait a minute, whoa, risk factor for Wax is high. I like that. Wax needs to make sure that we as players are engaged and are monetizing and have this player-to-player economy. They have to fuel our growth. They have to fuel our success, because if we're successful, they're successful. Again, there's an aligning of interest, and we do have risk, and they understand our risk, because they understand we could sell 150,000 packs or something and say, okay, good luck, everybody. But we didn't. We sold hundreds of packs, not tens or hundreds of thousands of packs. So that's risk alignment too, is, what's the team's track record? A lot of things you find when these people like, oh, we have an employee from EA, or we have an employee from Blizzard. Right. Well, anybody can be an employee at EA or Blizzard. That doesn't mean anything. Who are they? What have they done? I mean, I was very visible, right? Like, this is who I am and this is what I've done. Go to my Wwe Games profile, look at my gameology, or watch any of the streams that I do. Like, this is what I'm all about. This is how I'm wired. And then the last one was, community is so important. How are you fueling the growth of that community? We've got a Discord. Yeah, so what? We have a Discord too. But what do we do for Discord players during the month of August? Like, right now, we have no game to play where we're monetizing. We're not selling anything. But what we're doing is we're giving away over $30,000 worth of prizes to our players. $30,000 worth of prizes. And by the way, it wasn't like we just minted things to give away, so we're really not out that much money. We actually wanted to give away legendary brawlers, and we didn't have any. So we had to go to the secondary market and buy NFTs from our own players to give to other players. That's what we're doing to build community. That's what we're doing to kind of align risks. That's what we're doing to be very credible. That's what we're doing in terms of pedigree. And so there's all these things that we do to say, wow, okay, I see how you operate. You're above board. You're transparent. Your heart is in the right place. Maybe I like your game. Maybe I don't like your game. But it's not like, tell me about your project and tell me I'm an investor and, I need to know about block emissions. It's like, let's talk gamer speak. Let's build things that are really fun with a bunch of people who like to do what we like to do. And if we happen to make a little bit of money along the way, good for us. That is certainly that would certainly be the result.
So speaking of community, we have another question from Rec here. Will there be any games where you can set up smaller communities within the game, something like guilds or community teams, or working together for a common goal?
Of course. So the short answer is of course, right? So the thing that we're very mindful of is if it has worked historically in other games, like constructs that have worked, we will have it as well, right? So regular competitions, factions or guilds. things like, global chat or the ability to live stream, all these achievement systems is very popular. We want to bring achievement systems. The thing of it is that, we've only really been building blockchain brawlers in earnest since early December of last year, not even a full year, not even we're on our 8th month. And yet we're trying to build something that's really, really revolutionary. And I think that people don't realize that takes time and that takes patience. And so when I first started doing my streams back in kind of January this year, I said, guys, give us the benefit of the doubt, be patient. I promise you we will get there. And every single day that you play the game will be the worst version. The next day will be better than the day previous. We're tracking these wins. And so, we'll get there. And maybe you want to be an early adopter. Maybe you want to wait and see. That's okay. You don't need to come in on day one. You also don't need to wait for day 365. There'll be stuff to do. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But know that where we're going from a trajectory standpoint is an incredible place.
Excellent.
So yes, past things that you've seen, communities within the game itself will absolutely exist because they work and people want to do that. So we will take advantage of things that are perceived as being very positive features. When that is all to be determined, but we'll certainly support factions, stables, guilds, link shells, things of that nature.
To some extent, since it's blockchain, there's nothing y'all can do to stop those from forming, at least to some extent.
Organically, yeah, but you like structure within the game. So you want, guild on guild violence, right? Like, oh, my stable of mates is gonna, we're the #1 rated, wrestling faction in the world. That whole thing. Like, you want people to be allowed to do that, and the game and an interface and a structure or an infrastructure to support that is something that we would build. So yes, they can do it organically, but so much more fun when the game shows top guild in the game is guild XYZ. Is like, oh, I'm a part of that. Look at that. We want to help them with that messaging. There's no doubt.
And then kind of along the lines of seeing what has worked, I guess, previously. So recently we've seen a lot of disdain for clickers in the wax P2E space. The path for BCB was like clicker to PvP and then to esports and so on. Would you currently recommend the same pathway, the one that you're on now, to current, future, or any other projects?
No. Not even
cool. Yeah, and you know what? I've seen that. I've seen the adaptation. I just want to call that out. Like, I can recognize as a community member that Wax Studios is adjusting what they're doing based on what
Yeah, look, I've said in other places, and I'll say here, I think we were 90 to 120 days late to the kind of the clicker wave. I think clickers were and are, a very dangerous thing. It's certainly not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of understood kind of scar tissue that exists, and we can go into why those things all fail 100% of the time, always and forever, and they will continue to do so. But I will also tell you that we were too early with our game. Like, I would never ship a game that early or that underbaked ever again. It's what people seem to do, and it was a hard and painful lesson that I learned, but we learned it. And so kind of, revisionist history, I'm waiting until, kind of end of September or at some point in October, and when we have this full game built end to end, when people come in and they understand what are the core loops, what's the progression, what's the community doing, what about guilds, factions, streamability, esports, like all these things I would like to be live on day one. And I'd like to take the heat for, well, we're in the crypto winter. I don't care. I'm building a great game. I don't care what the price of Bitcoin is. Like, I'm going to build what you want to play. Yeah. And so that's a real hard thing to do because there's a lot of economic pressures that most companies face. Wax doesn't necessarily face those same pressures. So that's kind of nice in that regard. But I will tell you, there are certain clicker games that do well, and those people that play them seem to like them. Good. Good for you. That's okay. That's never going to be us. It just won't be. No more. It was a mistake, but the people who went through the mining phase on our side, a lot of them did very well. And it's going to sound maybe me talking out of both sides of my mouth. We built a clicker game. I think it was the best one in the world, but it was still just a clicker game, which was, I know, disappointing to a lot of folks. And again, that's why I sort of got ahead of it. Every day,
excellent. Yeah.
Every day will be better than the one before. Just hang with us. I promise we will get there.
Awesome. Sam, do you have any other questions? We're sitting at a little bit over an hour at the moment.
One thing I forgot to bring up earlier is I did Google the Fortnite stats. So in 2021, they had an $5.8 billion revenue. It's just crazy.
For a free-to-play game where cosmetics don't help you
yeah,
win a single additional match, it doesn't make you get any higher in that leaderboard. It's all cosmetics. 5.8 million. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's maybe an intimidation factor. I don't know.
No.
To having the skins. Um,
There's a cool factor. I don't know that it's intimidating.
yeah. I'd argue with Fortnite, sometimes it kind of turned into like a bullying factor.
Yeah, I
Like
would
you
argue.
have the
So
pleb skin or
yeah, I have a bunch of really rare skins in League of Legends, and I get camped all day long. Also, because I have a really high mastery score, so people have as a badge of courage like to come after me for whatever reason. And I was like, okay, here we go again. Like I get it. Like if you set yourself apart, you also put a target on your back, right? I guess that's what I'm saying, Sam. Ultimately,
Mhm. It's a good point. Because yeah, I feel like a lot of people, especially on games like Fortnite, assume it's the streamer because a lot of times streamers have all of the coolest skins. Yeah, and everybody wants to be the one that kills somebody live on stream.
Everybody wants to kill Ninja and Loser
Yeah.
Fruit and all those people. Poor Tyler Blevins. He's a marked man.
One of the most marked, right?
Yeah. Oh, he's been victim of snipe streaming. That's a dark world to go down that rabbit hole and look at the lives of a streamer or a competitive esports player. It really is getting swatted and all that stuff. It's legit. It's not a fun place.
Yeah. Going a little off topic here, but just
Yeah.
one more thing on the point. I just remember like maybe 5 years ago or more, watching I believe it was Shroud play PUBG, and it was like early days for PUBG when a lot of people were playing, and he like landed into this area, and I think PUBG at the time had like 100 players that loaded into each lobby, and
Right.
like he's trying to land on this house and get guns, and there's just like it's like kamikaze dive bombing him to try to be the one that kills him on stream, and it was nuts. Like he killed half the lobby in the first 5 minutes because everybody wanted to stream snipe him.
Right. Lots of interesting comments in the chat section. So my kids are all out of the house. I don't have to take care of kids anymore, and all I do is work and game. And so I find time to play a game of League here and there. It's not a massive time sink for me. But look, as a gaming professional too, Riot does a lot of things really well in terms of community, in terms of onboarding, in terms of design, in terms of UI and UX. That you have to be mindful of, the competition and what they do really well, because those are the masters, and that's where a lot of this great learning comes from, is us paying attention to what really, really kind of AAA game developers choose to do. So I say it's a little bit of work. I don't know how much work it is in terms of learning, but there are certainly helpful lessons that you can take away from kind of what it is that the other great companies do. And I don't just play League. I play there's probably 3 mobile games I play for 5 minutes a day every day, just to keep an eye on what they're up to and all that fun stuff.
Speaking of mobile games, one I forgot to bring up was the Avengers. Let me find the name.
Yeah.
That was one that definitely hooked me when it first came out. I did not know that you had worked on that. I was obsessed with upgrading my heroes for a little bit.
Of course you were. Everybody was. And you know what? There's too bad we don't have more.
I put a lot of money into that game.
There's so many great stories there about Marvel and working with them, and they didn't know what free to play was, and they didn't understand it. And there's this whole the game is so great, we have to delay it. They're like, that makes no sense. The game is late because it's terrible and you want more time. I'm like, no, it's actually really good. That's why we have to delay it. They're like, that, like, we don't understand that. Coming from this console space, right, when it's a disc in a box and you had to hit a holiday window or a video kind of launch, like they didn't know how to process free to play as an idea in 2012. They said, no, you're late. You're late. Your game's terrible. I'm like, no, our game is great. That's why we have to delay it. It literally could not compute. And when we kind of then showed them as we live opted kind of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months down the road, they're like this light bulb went off. They're like, oh my God, the world is going to go free to play. Like, it already is. You guys are just late. Like, there's this whole notion of, we're doing $1 million a month, $1 million a month, $2 million a month, $4 million a month. Movie comes out, $4 million a month, $5 million a month. And then we're live opping, movie phase, $3 million a month, $2 million a month, $1 million a month. Meanwhile, we're building and building and building live operating. And then we do this Deadpool launch, and they had totally lost track of revenue. They're like, yeah, whatever. You delayed it. We missed our licensing number, F you and da-da-da. Well, this Deadpool push came out. They're like, well, did you see the numbers we did in revenue this month? They're like, no. What are we down to, 700,000? I'm like, no, we did 13 million. They're like, no, 1.3. I'm like, no, 13.0. How? Impossible. It doesn't work that way. I'm like, it absolutely works that way. And let me tell you, they're like, okay, we're listening, right? And then you have their attention. like, oh my God. And then they did a deal with Square for a different Marvel game and negotiated things. Like we did this whole learning, educating, the Marvel licensing group about kind of free to play and how the business model works. And it was a wonderful experience. And they were great people. I'm still good friends with all those folks today, even though none of them work at Marvel. But that was a great game. And we delayed it because we saw the numbers in the Philippines and the test market were just off the charts. I said, I need more time to polish this and to put more features in.
That's awesome. That's funny how that blew their mind, like delaying a game that's...
Well, dude, let me tell you, I send them a revenue report every week and they never responded. I'm like, are you not paying attention to this? They're like, we don't even look at your reports anymore because we're so bummed out. You made us delay it and you're making less money than you did when the movie was playing, which we told you would happen. I'm like, okay. Like they literally were like, yeah, we're not reading your emails anymore. I'm like, all right, it's fine.
I bet they started reading once they started 13.
Yeah. Because by the way, they all got, because they hit their licensing numbers, which means they all got big annual bonuses, which means like they all of a sudden they became really interested in what was going on.
Because to date, it's done like over $300 million in revenue, right?
Yeah. They sunset the first one. I think the second one's also, I mean, that was 10 years ago. But yeah, it did over 300 million life to date for a game that was free to play and for a game that cost, $2 to $3 million to develop, pretty good ROI for the Walt Disney Company. So
yeah. That's pretty awesome. TD, did you have any more questions? I feel like I mostly just want to like ask you a whole bunch of Web 2 questions, which I feel bad taking up your time for that.
I think we're good. Michael, thank you so much for stopping by.
We want to talk about this. Can we talk about Nix Crypto Zero also said hard to get crypto stuff approved in the App Store. Like we're going to have Blockchain Brawlers is going to be a mobile game, right? And we're not going to have any ability to buy or sell anything crypto related, but we'll have the PvP game in there, right? And so the players will be able to compete on the go with their handheld device. It's not a day one feature, but we had a lot of conversations with Apple. We will be bringing it to mobile at some point into the Google Play Store where you can have your core gameplay mechanic, right? You can compete head to head. You can brawl. You can
Interesting.
Still using your NFTs, right?
Using your NFTs that you're gaming with, but you can't buy or sell from the application. But the things that I buy on the browser, right, in the crypto space,
sure,
they have representations of themselves in the actual game. So while they're technically NFTs, and the game just sees them as your brawler and your clothesline move, or your I'm going to give you the bird as a taunt. Like they don't see that like, oh, I see you're using NFT. Like, oh, this is just a game asset.
Right.
So we can divorce those things and keep, or we can divorce those things from one another. And we can put up this walled garden that says, and you can look at Thetan Arena does it, a couple other companies in games do it, but we're going to do it very much as well. And we'll be able to bring, and at some point, Apple and Google will come around on their whole policy, but we have no fear of bringing this to a free-to-play audience and convert them into pay-to-players or crypto players. We have no fear of bringing it to a mobile-centric audience and having an application that they can download and play. So the future is really bright. Also, we haven't talked about, we're going to be cross-chain. Like there's no doubt in my mind, we're going to be on every chain that's worth being on, every single protocol, we're going to be there. We're going to have the ability for those players to come in and bridge those assets into our game. And we're going to grow our audience really aggressively as soon as we know the time is right.
You want to ask that question?
Yeah. What's your, I think I feel like you asked it earlier. I don't remember.
We did.
What's your favorite genre?
Yeah. I would say just as a matter of course, genre, I love role-playing games a lot. Like, Final Fantasy 11, Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy 7, World of Warcraft, the action RPGs, Diablo 1, 2, 3, Immortal, like I feel, Lineage, Guild Wars, I want to say, Black Desert, Blood Rose. I played a bunch of RPGs.
You ever tried Destiny?
I've not played Destiny. Obviously, I know what it is. And I played New World for a hot minute of 8 weeks back in September of last year. So I've not played Lost Ark, I think it's called, which is the next game that came out. Yeah, Lost Ark. It came out from a Korean studio that was in conjunction with Amazon. But I love role-playing games as a genre. I like them a whole bunch. I think they're a ton of fun.
It's awesome. I think that's it for me for questions. Thank you a ton for giving us your time today. And sorry for going a little over an hour.
Yeah, sorry for running long. Sometimes I can't help myself. I love gaming so much, and I love people who love it. So I'll
stay here all day if you have the time. I'm sure you have less time in your day than we do.
I'm 17 minutes late for my next meeting.
Awesome, Michael.
Apologize.
Thank you so much for coming by. Audience, thank you for watching, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you so much.